welcome to part 2 in my beginner's knitting series. Today we'll be talking about casting on. So in my last video I talked about getting the materials you need to get started. So choosing your yarn and then selecting the needle size you want to use. So now that we have that, we are ready to get started. So casting on is really the process of getting your yarn onto the needle so that you can actually start knitting your project. We're actually going to cover 3 things today. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you guys how to make a slip knot. So that's the very first thing you do to get your yarn onto that needle. Then I'm going to show you a really basic cast on technique. It was the one I first used when I started learning to knit. It's very easy. You guys will pick it up in no time. And then I'm going to show you a second casting on technique, which is actually called the long tail technique. For this demonstration, I decided to use a medium weight yarn, so that's the number 4 weight, and size 8 knitting needles. In order to do the cast on, I'm only going to need a single needle, so I'm going to go ahead and take that away and set it aside. As I covered in the introduction, we're really learning 3 things today, and the very first is how to make a slip knot. So really this is step 1 of how to get our yarn onto the needle so we can begin working on our project. To get started, what I want you to do is, with your left hand, I want you to make a little ducky mouth with your index finger and your thumb. So your thumb is facing towards you, your index finger is facing out away from you. With my right hand, I'm going to grab the end of my yarn and just drape it over the top of those fingers, with the short end facing away from me, so it's draped over your index. With the lower 3 fingers on your left hand, just go ahead and grab that strand of yarn. With this long guy here, this part that's still attached to the main ball of yarn, gonna wrap it under our thumb and grab it with those lower 3 fingers as well. So just kind of showing you what I did, palm out, just a little bit of a different view. So there's my ducky fingers, wrap it around, grab the short end of our yarn, this is actually called the tail of our yarn, get it with those 3 fingers. Use the long end, this is called our working yarn, the part attached to the main ball of yarn. Tuck it into those 3 fingers as well. Alright, so now it's time to use our needle. I'm going to go ahead and grab it in my right hand. Using the tip of your needle, you want to press down onto that upper strand of yarn. And you want to press hard enough where you can sneak the tip of your needle under the lower strand of yarn. So let's do that one more time. Grab the yarn on top, press down, and slide the tip of your needle underneath that lower piece. Now all we're going to do is just rotate up. So you can see we've kind of created a little eyelet, a little hole of yarn where our needle is situated. To keep going with this, we're going to continue that rotation until you can touch the tip of your needle to the tip of your index finger. Now is where the fun really begins. We're going to slide the tip of our needle, keeping contact with that skin on our finger until we can sneak the tip into this yarn loop right here. So to give a kind of different angle on that, so I touch the tip of my finger, slide my needle down towards my palm until I can sneak the tip into this loop of yarn. Alright, we're almost done. We've got one more step. This is where the real fun takes off. So you can see that we have created kind of a triangle of yarn right here on our needle. What I want you to do is, using the thumb on your right hand, just kind of sneak your nail into that triangle. Hook your nail on that piece of yarn where we just put the tip of our needle. Keeping kind of a firm press on that yarn, what I want you to do is rotate your left thumb until you can sneak the tip of your needle out of the triangle and pull. And now we have a slip knot. In order to get it tight, you just pull on the tail piece until it tightens all the way to your needle. Alright, we're going to try that one more time. This time we're going to go a little bit faster. If you want to undo a slip knot, just take it off the needle and pull either side and it'll come right apart. Alright, one more time, here we go. Ducky fingers. Wrap and grab. Press down, sneak through, rotate around. Snake along your index finger. Slip through that loop of yarn. Grab on, rotate, slip. And there we go. That is your slip knot. Alright, now that we've got our slip knot on our needle, we are ready to start the cast on. So this first one I want to show you is extremely basic. When we're casting on, really all we're trying to do is get our yarn onto the needle. We're trying to create what we call live stitches so that we can begin working our project. So for this one, what I want you to do is, using your left hand, you're going to make a Vulcan sign, live long and prosper, but then you're actually going to rotate it out, so really you only want your index finger kind of isolated right now. The yarn is underneath your palm, and then you just kind of drape it over your index finger here. So this is what it should look like. All the work we're going to do is really going to be with this index finger here. What I want you to do is kind of rotate around until you make a loop of yarn on your finger. So I'll show you again, just rotate around, and now you have a loop. What you're going to do with your needle, with your right hand, is get kind of between your middle finger and your index finger, trace until you can get inside that loop with the tip of your needle, and there you go. We now have 2 live stitches. The slip knot actually does count as a live stitches. So there we go. There are 2 stitches on our needle now. So we're going to do that again. We're going to rotate, make that loop on our pointer finger, get into that loop, and pull. So when you really start going, this is kind of what you'll start to see. Like I said, this is extremely quick. All we're trying to do is get our working yarn onto the needle and make some live stitches so we can keep going with our work. Now let's try the long tail cast on. So as you probably guessed based on the name, we have to do a long tail for this method. How long does that tail have to be? It's a little bit arbitrary, but there is a best practice we can follow to ensure that we have enough to complete the cast on. So with that prior technique I showed you for the cast on, you could make anywhere between 2 and 2,000 stitches, and the method would be identical. But with this one, because the tail is involved in the cast on, we do want to make sure that we measure and have at least enough to complete it. So to measure that tail, just use your knitting needle in your right hand and hold the yarn to it. You can hold it any way. I'm just kind of keeping my thumb on it, keeping it secure to the needle. If you want to use your whole hand, that's fine too. Just whatever is comfortable for you. So holding the yarn, just pressing it to the needle, I'm going to say let's cast on 8 stitches. So I'm going to measure out 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how long your tail has to be. So we're going to make a slip knot just like I showed you earlier in the video. Ta-da! And that actually gave us a little bit of extra tail to work with, so we are good to go. We are good to get started. So we're going back to little ducky mouth hand on our left hand. This time it's a little different than we were making the slip knot. I want the tail of the yarn coming towards me and the working yarn away from me. The working yarn goes over my index finger, the tail goes over my thumb, and then you grab it with your lower 3 fingers on your left hand, just like before. To start the cast on, what I want you to do is come towards your body and down. Just touch anywhere on your palm, it doesn't matter. But what we're trying to do is trace up our thumb skin and into the loop of yarn on our thumb. Now we're going to grab some working yarn. So how we're going to do that is to come beside the yarn, get the needle underneath it, and then we're going to pull through the yarn on our thumb. To tighten that stitch, we just pull on the tail. Alright, so now we have 2 live stitches on our needle. So we're going to try that again. We're going to make another stitch. So we're coming down towards ourselves, towards our palm. Get the tip of your needle into the loop on your thumb. Come around and under that working yarn, pull it through, tighten with your tail. So I said we were making 8 stitches, we've made 3. Let's make 5 more. So that's 4 stitches, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the reason we wanted to do that measuring, at a certain point I won't be able to hold on to that tail of the yarn anymore to continue making stitches. So I'm just about there. Alright, I can feel it. I can no longer securely hold on to the working yarn and the tail of the yarn in my hand. You see the tail has become too short for me to grab it anymore. So that is why we measure. This is what we run into. Now that you have the desired number of stitches on your needle using whichever cast-on method you prefer, we are ready for the next step in this knitting process, the next video in the beginner's knitting series, and that is knitting itself. So please join me for the next video where I'll cover the basics of knitting.